Good morning, everyone, and welcome to More with Less. Today, I want to talk with you about entrepreneuring, and I want to share with you one of the biggest fails I had as an entrepreneur, or have had thus far. I'm sure there's more to come because I love creating new businesses. But right behind me here is my scare mosquito. And it really doesn't work because this summer has been a mosquito-filled summer here at my house because there's been a lot of rain. But this is a piece of metal art that I represented. I had a company a few years ago called Minnesota Metal Art. And I love this kind of sculpture, and it was made with broken parts, blank parts left over on a manufacturing floor. And there was an artist that I loved his work, and I represented him in metal art, in art shows. And two of my biggest claims to fame in the art world were I was invited 2 years in a row to go to the Philadelphia Flower Show. It's a wonderful flower show. I think it was, I don't know if it was 7 days or 10 days. It's been a few years. But one of the things I learned from this whole experience of entrepreneuring with metal art was that you have to learn to count the cost. And I talk about that in entrepreneuring a lot, the cost-benefit analysis. There's more than one type of cost in starting a business. Well, for instance, in this business, I represented the artists, and they let me carry there were 3 artists, and they let me carry their metal art to these shows, and they didn't charge me, and then I paid them. I did a 50-50 split with them on the artwork I sold. So I didn't have money up front, but there was a lot of hidden costs that I needed to be aware of, and I encourage you to be aware of as well. One was just the simple physical cost of moving the stuff, the cost to my body. I only had one person working with me each of the 2 years we went to the Philadelphia Flower Show, and hauling, we had to put all of these metal art pieces. They don't fit together, they don't nest. Every one of them was unique, and we had to put them into a big U-Haul truck, so I had to rent a truck, pay all the gas. It cost me over $10,000 to be at the show, and that was before all my food and hotel expenses. It was a very expensive endeavor. And so I hauled all this metal art to Philadelphia from Minnesota, and it was very popular. However, it took me a full day to set it up at the show, and it took me a half a day to tear it down and load what we hadn't sold. And then some of the hidden costs were, well, for instance, my wife went with me one year, and she still says to this day it's part of the reason she has back pain. Oh, my back! And I hope that's not the case. But it was a grueling show, and it took its toll, and I think we might have broken even one year, and we may have made $2,000 or $3,000 another year.
Right here, what I call them, fun coupons.
It was really difficult to make a profit. So while I was there, one of the things that dawned on me, this was the second year I was at Philadelphia Flower Show, was that we took a day to set up. We got set up, we started displaying, started selling this heavy metal sculpture, and about 2 hours before, when we had setup time the day before, about 2 hours before the end of setup time, a guy comes in, and he's across the aisle from me, and he has a big case, and he wheels it in, and he pops up this beautiful little display, and then he gets these little stands out. And what this artist did is he had created a process where they would take the leaves of like maple leaves and other types of pieces of natural flora and fauna, like little heads of wheat and other types of little pieces that they found, shells, and they had an electrolysis electrolysis method of having gold adhere to them, and then they would bake them, and they would make gold jewelry. So it would be natural pieces of leaves and other recognizable pieces of nature, and they would turn them into necklaces and earrings. And it took him 2 hours to unbox all that and set it all up. It was very expensive because it was 14 karat gold. And he sold, I think he probably sold at least a third more in total revenue than I did. He may have sold twice as much. And when the show came to an end, he took all that was left and he put it all together and he boxed it all up and he wheeled it out and he was gone in 2 hours, and I was left for another 6 hours of hauling all this heavy stuff out. And the lesson I learned then was I had not done a proper job in counting the cost. These pieces had a lot of value, but they didn't have the value for the weight and the ability to transport that the jewelry had. And yet the jewelry, because it was gold jewelry, had a premium price that he was able to get for that. And he told me that his whole family was involved after they had created this process, that he had, I think, 3 other family members that were going from show to show to show, and I'm sure they were multimillionaires, and they were selling this gold jewelry that they made from these beautiful natural pieces. Another thing that I didn't take into account was that, well, for one, this is an unknown. I won't say too much about this, but several of my artists, they are very, very emotionally connected to their art. And when I came back from the show, and then I would come, and a couple of the artists, I would not have done well in selling their pieces because they weren't as in high demand. They were angry. It was really hard for me to help them to understand that it wasn't something that we did, and yet they had this predisposition that I must have done something wrong. And I myself don't like to hurt anyone's feelings. I mean, I'm glad to talk about realities with people, and I was glad to, but I felt terrible because I did like their artwork, but it wasn't the type of artwork that was in demand at these giant shows. And it was really hard for them to hear the bad news that their art had not produced. So I hated that. And then I had to haul all their stuff back, and it was heavy. And so I would come back with a half a truck full of metal art that did not sell. So we made a little bit of money, and I learned a lot, but I'm here to tell you that if you are looking at entrepreneuring, the best types of businesses to start are service-oriented businesses, which there's, in service-oriented businesses, you have a very low overhead. You can actually start with a smaller amount of equipment. Always do things that if you have a skill set that you already have, your skills can make you money, and you don't have to pick up, 75-pound pieces of display materials or gear. Even my business where I haul my camera gear and everything with me, I have a video business. I do professional video work, and I also do advertising pieces for people in video. And my gear is relatively light, but my kit is kind of expensive. There are a lot of businesses that you can start with a minimal amount of gear. And if you have a skill set, especially if you have skilled labor, like you're good at fixing things. If you have some carpentry skills, if you can do odd jobs, there's a huge demand in this environment today, where there are not a whole lot of people who will work on remodels or fixing other people's mistakes. But if you find that kind of a person, or you are that kind of a person, there's a huge demand. But there's a lot of businesses that you can start with very little bit of capital, financial capital. The problem here is I didn't have a lot of financial capital up, but I had a huge amount of time capital. I had a huge amount of expenses to maintain the business, and it was a huge amount of sweat equity had to go into it, and it ultimately failed. I just could not carry it forward and the other problem I had was the artists themselves. This artist in particular could not produce enough pieces that I could actually make a living selling the artwork that actually worked. So that's a little bit of my story, a little bit of my road film, I guess you would say, part of my journey and part of my travels that I hope that you can learn from. It was a great experience, don't get me wrong. And no matter where I live in the future, I'm going to keep these art pieces with me in my garden sculptures. I love them. I love metal art, but I don't think you'll ever see me going back into the metal art business again. Thanks. I hope you enjoy your day. Be an entrepreneur. Get out there, create ideas, but always do a cost-benefit analysis, a check marks of what is it going to cost me in time, labor, money, and then measure it against the potential outcome and figure out a way to enter into that particular field without breaking the bank or breaking your back. Thanks for joining me in this short, I had a failed entrepreneur experiment, more with less.